and Flaherty present. Our chairman, Margaret Feinberg, is not present, and I, Supervisor Guy, will be in the chair. Will you please stand and join us to pledge allegiance to our flag and country? I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all very much. If you have a noise-making machine like this, please put it on silent so we will not be disturbed unnecessarily. Also at the table is our attorney, Mr. Perez, and our district manager, Shoemaker. Mr. District Manager, do we have folks who would like to speak to the board tonight?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, as Mrs. Feinberg is on the telephone and as we have a physical quorum present, if the board would be so inclined, the appropriate would be in order for a motion to be moved and adopted to allow Mrs. Feinberg's full participation, finding exceptional circumstances due to her not feeling well or being indisposed.
Mr. Tickle, would you please make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're not on any drugs, are you?
No,
Just want to make sure she's a sound mind. So some of that stuff you get these days is strong.
Yes, sir, we have 6 people today like to speak, and we'll start with Rich Machia, Lakeland Circle Court. Bocce.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I live at Silver Lakes, and I and my friends in the front row represent the Silver Lakes Bocce League. I have 30 other people on this league, by the way. Last year, I proposed that you build a couple of bocce courts. At that time, I met with an Anthony, who I understand no longer works for you. We went right over here to the first pavilion by the pond, and we picked out a piece of property that could support the 2 bocce courts. After that, I heard from one of your lady associates, and we figured we were going along pretty good, but didn't hear anything from that after that. I'd like to propose new plans, and on the back of this sheet is the cost of the material for the bocce courts. And I'd like to present this to you, and in the front, it's very popular. You'll see what, that's from Cape Coral. They have about 6 or 7 bocce courts, I understand. Very popular. So I'm reproposing the bocce courts to be put over where I met with Anthony, right over here, by the first pavilion, right side.
By where, please?
By this first, as soon as you're coming in, you turn left, and there's a pavilion over there, and you got the pond right next to the pond. That piece of property right there.
I see.
That's what he suggested.
Are you proposing one that is undercover, like this one
No,
appears to
no
be?
cover, no nothing. No cover, just white oak. And we bring our own equipment, bocce balls or what have you. There's nothing involved with you guys. So I'd like to repropose that and hope for your consideration. Very popular. I'm sure after it gets out, Gateway residents will all be interested in playing bocce. It's really very popular.
Question?
Yeah, apologize this is taking so long. I hope later on today to have a presentation of a possible park consultants to talk to. I'd like to see not only bocce, but I'd like to see pickleball. I'd like to see both of those really extremely looked at instead of over here with this congested traffic mess, to put it over there beside the swimming pool.
Okay.
Along with the possibility of a layout for other amenities that could be built in separate phases, and along with the possibility of a building that could be built there. But we have a plan that we found up in the attic that had been done some years ago, and it would be very easy to take and incorporate both bocce and pickleball into that.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that once we get that consultant on board, we can get that phase 1 project, which would be those 2 things, fired up as quick as possible, because I agree with you, they're immensely popular.
And the back of that, those plans also gives you the prices of the material, and it's like $987 for the material.
They're not very expensive.
No. Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
One second.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions?
No.
You
Margaret,
can
do you
keep
have
that.
some?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Anybody wants to play bocce, let us know.
Easy.
Next, we have Jim Brand, Avalon Lake Circle, speaking about Hampton Park stormwater planning.
Good afternoon. I'm James Brand, 10154 Avalon Lake Circle, Hampton Park. I'm the HOA Resident Board Director for Hampton Park. Potable water, sewer systems, stormwater management. The three highest priorities for Gateway Services. That's my perspective. Some of you may remember, and I know Ed and Bill in particular will remember Music Man. You younger folks may not. However, I'm sure you may remember the main tagline from Music Man was, "You got trouble." It starts with a T and that rhymes with P, which stands for pool. They were all concerned about pool halls. Or maybe those younger folks, I know Tony told me he remembers Meatloaf and their song about 2 out of 3, that ain't bad. 2 out of 3 is bad, and we got trouble in Gateway. In August, you held a Gateway residents meeting to discuss the need for and a vote on a $20 million plus bond issue. The discussion stressed that stormwater management is a system which must work together with other systems. I wholeheartedly agree. Later in August and in September, we had a catastrophe in Gateway and other parts of Lee County. Our sewer system was impacted. Our stormwater management system was impacted. 2 out of 3, that was bad. I know you have taken major actions on our sewer systems. That's good. I know that if major actions and planning were needed to meet potable water needs, you would act. You probably have, if not recently, in the past. I'm concerned about all 3 systems, but today my focus is on stormwater management system planning. You and staff are working hard on Hampton Park Storm Lake construction deficiencies. I and the residents of Hampton Park appreciate that, and we fully believe you will be successful in getting those deficiencies taken care of and then taking ownership of the Hampton Park stormwater lakes. To my knowledge, stormwater management systems in place were planned in 1986 and includes as part of the plans the flooding of streets and yards. No major planning discussions or actions have taken place to change that strategy based on my knowledge. Hagan Engineering presented to you in September and made multiple recommendations. 2 of them, number 3 and number 6, have to do with managing water in the lakes by including adjustable weirs and taking proactive action to lower the water in the lakes so that you have a reservoir for stormwater management when a major event's going to occur. In November, and I, 2 residents of Hampton Park, met with Lee County Commissioner Pendergrass and members of his staff. We were told that a planning committee had been formed to address short, intermediate, and long-term stormwater planning in Lee County. They were working with municipalities such as Bonita Springs, Estero, Fort Myers, Lehigh Acres, and others. They did not include Gateway because we are unincorporated Lee County. In December at a Hampton Park Town Hall meeting, a resident asked if anything was being done to stop flooding of streets and yards when a major storm event occurred. I responded that yes, planning had to take place and multiple Lee County government bodies were involved, so it would take some time. Ed Tinkle, who was in attendance of the meeting, agreed. We discussed the need for adjustable gates and proactive lowering of the lake levels prior to major storms, and that planning must occur to get this capability. Lee County and Gateway must work together to change and improve how stormwater is managed. It is a system encompassing all of Lee County and must be addressed from that perspective. Now's the time to do so. Please take action. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tim. Hold on just one second, please. Questions from the board?
I totally agree with everything Jim said, as we've indicated, and we've been told by South Florida Water Management District. One of the first things we do, and Chris is working on it, we have got to get as-built information on our 7 or 8 weirs. I have no idea that the information that we have been using since 1986 is correct. I, in fact, do know that weir number 3, which was in fact designed and permitted at 25 feet, was only 20 feet wide. That is the weir that serves all of Gateway outside of Pelican Preserve. 5 feet is significant in building up water, but I think there's more errors than just that. And I don't want to go to South Florida Water Management District and not have all the facts of what is there or what isn't there, or what was built right or what wasn't built right. Not even counting the fact that I still have a question about how big is the box culverts, or are the box culverts going under I-75? One report shows it's 8 by 4, another one shows it's 11 by 6. One of them is in a location that's very difficult to get to. I do know the upstream side's 11 by 6, so that's encouraging. But things like that, we need to have the answer to before we spend $10, $15, $20, $30,000 on a hydraulic model to show South Florida Water Management District that there are options to avoid what happened in August and September.
Thank you, Ed. Mr. Flaherty?
Yeah, I do. I have a question for Chris, because that was on my list about the weirs. What exactly are you doing in your office to address this issue?
Right now, we are getting, we'll start in the next week to 10 days, having those structures surveyed and as-built with current data. We've finished the ones at Hampton Park, and we'll be moving right down the line. And we've also had extreme divers out on the other side of I-75 checking the culverts and the box culverts for any type of obstructions out there. So they ran a remote camera through there to see if there are any sandbars, rocks, or that impeding those structures. But the next month, it'll be just survey data and elevations that we can use.
Okay. And would it be possible to come back with that information to us?
Sure.
So
We'll
we'll
get a
know
report
what's,
from the surveyor.
so we'll know what's going on?
Yep. And the Hampton ones, we just finished as-building the elevations on those.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Margaret, anything?
No, not at this time.
Thank you.
If I could respond to Ed's comments real quickly. I agree with what you said, Ed. We need that before we go to South Florida Water Management District. However, I think we should reach out to Lee County, to Commissioner Pendergrass, to participate in the planning going on in the rest of the county. We can't do it by ourselves. We need to participate. That's what I'm asking. The work that Chris and his staff is doing absolutely must be done. I agree, we must do that before we talk to South Florida Water Management District. But Lee County has a planning group put together. We're not included. We need to participate.
Bill, just a follow-up to that, I'm glad you brought that up. I had it and skipped it. I did, you've got on your note here, Roland Ottolini. He is the man that's in charge of that. I made contact with him after several phone calls was unsuccessful. He is not of the opinion that we need a representative from Gateway, let's put it that way, to be on this committee. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I would be more than happy to work with you once we get the numbers and the facts of what our flow is going to be coming out of Gateway into 6 Mile Cypress, because if you're going to be doing any work, he totally recognizes that 6 Mile Cypress Slough is an issue, but it also is an environmental issue relative to dredging. But he also understands 10 Mile Canal is a real problem, and something's got to be done on that. So at least they talk the talk. Now, the question is, are they going to walk the walk and do the work to clean those things up? I volunteered. I told him I'm available anytime to come to any meeting to talk to you about Gateway's numbers. But I said, I can tell you one thing right now. Gateway was designed on, I forget what the number was, 500-plus acres. Or I'm sorry, 5,000 plus acres, 5,300 acres is what is in the permit. And I can show you right now, we're pushing 7,000 acres, which means there is a lot more water going under I-75 and into the 6 Mile Cypress and 10 Mile Canal than they ever envisioned. And I said, people in Gateway are asking the question, why was Gateway so wet when the other communities, Botanica, Miramar, all of those, not Miramar, Plantation, but the other one, The one that's got a bay that doesn't have a bay. The one on Tree Line. Marina Bay, thank you. They were dry. How could they be
And they're
dry?
downstream.
I'm sorry?
And they're downstream.
They discharge downstream of us in the 6 Mile Slough. How's that happen? The water goes this way, it doesn't go this way. So there's something is wrong in the hydraulic system and it needs to be looked at. But I did volunteer and it was kind of a thanks but no thanks.
Well, in all due respect to Mr. Ottolini, we are in Commissioner Pendergrass's district. We have, 10,000 residents in his district,
And we're also in his ear.
and we're in his ear. He has a son who lives in Hampton Park. When we met with Commissioner Pendergrass, he was all for our participation. So Ed, I know you play golf with Cecil. Please, use your influence. Thank you all very
Let him
much.
win.
I'm sorry.
Let him win.
Oh, that's probably not easy, not hard at all. Any other questions, sir?
Anything else? Thank you, Jim.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Jim.
much, Bill.
Next, we have Bob Gephardt, like to talk about conservation area turnover.
Bob Gephardt from Pelican Preserve Ponds Work Group on PPAC. Before I say anything about conservation areas, we're also in Mr. Pendergrass's ear, and he's totally aware of what the impact was of the decisions Lee County's going to make on Pelican Preserve. So we've had a couple meetings. What I'd like to talk today about, or speak to you about, is there is a proposal that is currently circulating where the district would take over the maintenance responsibility for the various conservation areas within Pelican Preserve. And the Ponds Work Group is totally supportive of the idea. What I'm requesting today is that when this proposal comes before the board, that action be deferred on the financial responsibility of that transfer until the beginning of our next fiscal year. We tried for 5 months before the 2017-18 budget to find out what the numbers were so that we could plan for what this would cost us in the transition and then put it into our budget. We never got an answer despite 5 or 6 requests. So what I'm saying is if it wasn't important for those 4 or 5 months, then right now it's already February. We'll take the responsibility beginning in October, as long as they pay for this year. Thank you very much.
Stay there, please, for a minute.
Sure.
Do you have,
Bob, how many ponds and where are we talking about?
These are all conservation areas, and I think it's about 17 if my
But
memory's
are they
correct.
all the ones basically east?
The
of-
whole community. We
Whole
don't have
community?
any.
Okay. Okay.
We don't have any.
Well, one time, and I think it could have been a topographical error, 2 of those ponds, as I recall, I'm sorry, 2 of those conservation areas, I thought what I saw was transferred to the master HOA.
There was,
that a
that did
mistake?
take place in about 2010-11 timeframe.
Yeah.
And then we had a community got in violation behind their condominiums. And a citation was issued and a fine and et cetera. And we got a letter at that time from Barry Ernst, and they snatched back all the responsibility, and we've done nothing since. Because Ponds was responsible for one time, and we had budgeted. But when that went back, and I've got all the letters.
I'm
at home.
talking within the last 6 months.
No, nothing that I
could have
know
swore a
of.
map came in here before us that had 2 conservation areas that were being included with other common areas. And I thought it might have been a typo.
May have been, I'm not aware of it.
Okay, but you're of the understanding that all conservation area wetlands would be coming to us.
Yes, that's the documents that Chris and I have been discussing.
That's the key thing.
It's currently under, consideration.
The 2 may have been the one that Bob was referencing that happened a number of years back.
Yes.
And I think.
Well, it was more than 2, but yes, that's
There's
the
an
one.
indication it was recently discovered, I think.
Yeah, we resurfaced and dug up the old Ernst letter and,
Okay.
because we've had a lot of confusion on PPAC about responsibility for the main conservation area behind the sales center. Because there's certain things that we want to do and the residents want us to do, and we have to go to South Florida, but until we're managing it, we can't.
Okay.
Any other questions?
yes, Bob, do you have any idea how many acres are involved?
I don't know what the acreage is, but I finally got a number. Dave Caldwell was kind enough to provide it, and it's a little less than $80,000 a year, David. Does that sound right to you, to maintain them? The conservation areas within Pelican? I think the numbers, could be 70, could be 80, but somewhere in that ballpark.
Well, that's dollars.
That's
per year.
dollars per year.
Thank you, Bob.
Has anybody inspected them at this point? Gone out to
Well,
inspect
we have not done
for
anything.
exotics, or do we have a,
They have a contractor, and we're assuming
so we
that
can
he's
get
on
a
it.
affidavit or
Get the
something from
reports, yes.
him indicating that the pond, or the wetlands have all been?
And I assume
taken
that'll be a
care of?
normal part of the turnover process.
Okay.
Just one second. Margaret, anything?
No.
Thank you, Bob.
I'm okay.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Bob.
Next we'll move to agenda items. We have Phil Measy, who wants to talk about item 5B, conveyance.
Phil Measy, 9296 Trieste Drive, representing P-PAC. Just a kind of an addendum to Bob's comment, and that is, I think we've resolved one of the problems we had with the main preserve, which was that is partially owned by the Sienna Neighborhood Association, and arrangements have been made to give rights of way over that we can then take control of the whole thing when finally it passes to the CDD.
Just quit claim deed it? Just quit claim deed it, yeah.
Well, no, yeah,
Why-
Or it might have to be in the form of an easement if it's.
it's an easement. It's an easement.
Because it might be part of the common.
That's what
area.
it is. It is an easement because it's part of the common area. That's
I
correct.
guess my question is, why do they want it?
Well, they may not, the difficulty is if you have property that's part of a common area, and to try to take it out of the common area, depending upon what how many votes are required in order to achieve that.
Must be more complicated. 'cause-
Versus a lease.
But the easement has already been signed,
Okay.
and so that has happened.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a few kind of preliminary comments about, we're obviously working on conveyance issues, and today specifically on Tract L. We have continuing concerns at P-PAC about the things that aren't included in the conveyance considerations, things like landscaping and safety and those kinds of things. But there are also numerous curb and road problems that have been pointed out. We will admit that many of these are probably fairly minor. Tetra Tech has looked at the situation and has recommended a couple of things that need to be done prior to conveyance. Subsequent to the survey that was done by Tetra Tech and P-PAC people, there were a couple of other items that we've discovered. Shame on us. We should have had them on the list. We think those should be corrected as well. And we're also very concerned about construction practices. And I'm going to not get into the details because my associate here, Joe Schofield, is going to talk to you about some of the details of the problems that we've we've seen in doing this. So I just wanted to do that as a preliminary.
Hold on just a second, please. Do you have anything?
No.
Margaret?
No, not at this time.
Thank you, Phil.
Okay, next, Joe Schofield. Would also like to address conveyance.
Joe Schofield, 11507 Julia Drive in Carina. And I sleep with this every night now. It's concrete. We've done a lot of inspections starting back in July in our community. I was responsible for the Carina neighborhood and some of Matarita. We had other folks looking at other areas, and we put a spreadsheet together listing items that we saw. And as Phil said, I agree that we anywhere there was a crack or an issue, we marked it. Some of those, in going with Tetra Tech, we agreed were just going to be more normal issues. But we found a number of them that were very severe. And we put the report together. We sent the spreadsheet out. I think all of you have seen that by now. And we went on January 12th. Tetra Tech came to our community. We drove around for a couple of hours in the morning, not able to cover the entire community, but the Carina neighborhood specifically and Matarita Drive specifically. And we identified those items that we considered priority one had to be fixed before we moved forward. We agreed that the other items we found, many of them are at the point where they're going to deteriorate, become bad, and ultimately somebody will have to fix them. As Phil said, there was one that we had picked up on that first inspection spreadsheet that somehow got overlooked and not marked priority one, but it is severe and getting worse. And there was another one on the spreadsheet that was a priority one that was simply missed. And that's about a 3 to 4 foot long section that is just completely broken up on Vitale Road. That was marked somehow, whoever came through our community with the paint and marked the areas didn't mark that area. So that's one that we feel needs to be corrected also. I've gotten involved, I had a little bit of experience in my past history with concrete, but not anywhere near an expert for sure. I'm not a civil engineer, I'm a mechanical engineer, but I did have some jobs involving concrete structures with dams and bedding for equipment to be mounted on. So I did have a little bit of influence from that. But I happened to be on site when the repair folks came out the other day, January 29th, and I watched the work. And I saw them cutting out and digging some areas and what I would call excavating a hole. And specifically, they did the sidewalk up the street from where I live, and they took the concrete out and just left the sand there. They did the same going down Julia Drive in the gutters. They removed concrete. They put some boards in for framing, but not the whole area was framed. That didn't necessarily need complete framework. But I asked them if they were going to be putting any gravel or anything in. I used the term gravel for lack of a more technical term. I've since learned that we call that stuff lime rock in Florida at least. And they said no, they were just going to be pouring the concrete, and lo and behold, that's exactly what they did. They came in and poured the concrete in those holes. They worked it. It looks very nice on the surface. But I got curious, so I started checking. I've been trying to find out from different sources what the specifications are for building roads, building pavements, building sidewalks, what the construction process is and the proper practices are for preparing for the concrete, which I call the final pour there. And I've found, quite frankly, a ton of information. And this morning I was able to get with a fellow at the city of Fort Myers who informed me that the proper process is to use a 3,000 PSI rated aggregate concrete. Ready mix is what they call it. I found out that we should have had at least 2 inches of a base, which would be the lime rock, and it was supposed to be, actually the ground was supposed to be stamped down, perhaps watered to help that process, then the lime rock put in place, stamped down, and then the concrete poured on that.
Joe, I don't mean to interrupt, but you have to wrap it up 30 seconds. You have a 5-minute time limit.
I was going to ask if I could have some more time for that, because this is not a subject that can be done in 5 minutes, quite frankly.
Make it as fast as you can,
I will
please.
do that. Bottom line is, in checking with the city, number one, I found out you need to pull a permit to do this repair work. You need to follow city rules and regulations and meet the codes. And even though Pelican Preserve is a special private or a special district within the city, they're still required to follow all the building codes within the city. This was not done. No permits were pulled that we can find, talking with the city. No inspections came out to look at the work that was done. And I am suggesting that nothing can be approved or accepted until we make sure we have the proper permitting, the proper inspections were done. I don't see how any inspection could be done when they did the work in one day. You'd have to have a city inspector come out, look at the pre-work, then have an inspector come out and watch the pour and make sure that it was done right. I will pass a lot of information off to the council on concrete. And I'm not sure, Phil, I got a bunch of copies of a report, and I'm not sure if I should be passing that out to everybody on the board or just what that was for. Okay, but I will pass this information out. But my comment is, we should not be accepting anything. The city told me that everything had to be poured in accordance with their codes and specs, including the ADA, which is the requirements for disability people. That has not been done in the sidewalk section or the gutters. There's also certain elevations that are required on that, certain slopes and all that stuff.
Okay,
So there's
Joe,
a lot of
I
specifics.
think we've got it.
Great.
Thank you. Now, stay right there. Question from our engineer?
Tyler, these plans and specifications were approved by the city?
Hello, I'm Tyler Wainwright. I'm with Tetra Tech. Yeah, the plans were approved by the city. They would have been for Track Dell probably around 2009.
So the only issue that would be pertinent would be if the construction followed the plans and specifications.
Yeah, and I don't know what the conversation Mr. Schofield had with Mr. Porter was. Apparently, Mr. Porter is in the opinion of a permit is needed to replace broken curbing. I don't know if I agree with that or not, but I don't work for the city, so I don't want to make that decision. But apparently, that's what he said.
I don't know who.
Mr. Bill Porter was very emphatic that permits needed to be poured for repair work as well as original work.
He's a city
He's the
employee.
city engineer for the Public Works Department.
Joe, early in your comments, you used the term repair folks. That was your term.
The repair
You-
contractors. Folks.
Who were these repair folks? Did they have
Well, I have their names
a name on
in
their,
here.
did they have a name on their truck?
Yes, they do, and I sent pictures of of that company.
What?
In fact, Tyler, you know who they were. Can you remember the name?
Yeah, the company that did at least the work that I saw was Curb Systems. They're out of Fort Myers. They're actually a pretty good company. So
They're subs to the prime over there?
I don't know how it was contracted. I imagine Lennar contracted directly with Curb Systems.
Okay, okay. This was to do essentially punch list items?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, my recommendation would be that the board should get a copy of the drawings, the engineering drawings, the specifications on how the curbing is supposed to be manufactured, show the different layers, the specification for the concrete, and I think that should all be part of purchase orders. Any company that's buying specific stuff normally would put in a purchase order, I want this, but I want it to meet this specs and this specs, and that's typically a requirement that I'm familiar with in my career. And I think that should be supplied, it should be readily available, along with the drawings. And there are drawings I have in these that are standard city drawings showing standard construction practices.
Thank you,
The-
Joe.
The problem with that, Joe, is that, looking at it from the other side, is that when the developers do these, they retain engineers. And those engineers are licensed, and they have to prepare plans and specifications, seal those plans and specifications, and get the approval of the entity, whether it's the county or the city. So when they went through, they had to have done that. Now, if there were changes in the specifications of the city, then those aren't applicable. Those
I
aren't
don't know of any
applicable. So-
changes made in the city, but I will say this, based on what I have seen and talking with the construction crew, I think GSCDD is warranted in doing some core sampling throughout the entire community. My observation is there are more cracks and broken pieces in Track L than anywhere else in Pelican Preserve. And I agree, Pelican Preserve, the old Pelican Preserve, they've had a chance through many years to maybe fix and correct cracks, but it seems like an abnormal amount in that community. And if there is no base under any of that concrete, it is going to crack anytime something of any substantial weight runs over it, because there's no support for that concrete to hold in place, and it will just break because it goes into tension instead of compression.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Manager?
We have two other speakers today, but Mr. David Caldwell is here, and he's just available to speak on item 3B if needed. And Rhonda Brewer is also here from Lennar to address Track L.
Either one of them want to speak at this time? You want to wait till we get there? Rhonda?
Not on Track Dow, but I just wanted to comment on the conservation areas, the preserves and wetlands. Just to let the board know that all of those preserves and wetlands, we have sent them to Chris Shoemaker earlier in January for execution of transfer. They're fully compliant, and he has all that documentation from South Florida Water Management District. In regards to the budget for 2018, we really don't see that as our responsibility to take over. Everything's done, so if PPAC didn't go out there and get bids, we really don't feel that that's our problem. Thank you.
Okay, is that it, Mr. Manager, for
Yes,
now?
sir.
Okay. Staff reports. We have a District engineer on 3A for Tractel and Carina curb memo.
Hello again. So I am Tyler Wainwright with Tetra Tech. I'll be your district engineer. So the memorandum that's in your board book today is a follow-up on the conversation we had from 2 board meetings ago. So this is in regards to Tractel. This is what Mr. Schofield was just speaking to you about. So here's the brief summary. The area currently up for proposal to be conveyed to the GSCDD is Tractel. There are other areas of the community, Carina, Matarita, that were walked all at the same time, but as far as Tractel goes, there was 2 items which we found that we recommended to be repaired. There was one that was on level sidewalk, one of the panels had settled, and there was a lip on the sidewalk that was an ADA issue, so we asked Lennar to have that ground down so it was flush.
Oh,
That's
was
been
that
taken
done?
care of. Yes, sir, that's been done. And the other one was a cracked piece of curbing on Matarita Drive. That one's also been done. So both the items from this list in regard to Tractel, done. So, like Mr. Schofield said, we walked a lot of the other areas of the community. There were a list of items that we thought should be repaired. Those items are listed on here. I think most of those have been done. I haven't rewalked it to tell you every single one of them are done, but I think most of them have been completed. They were working on those last week. So that's our summary and that's our review. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Mrs. Flair?
I have a list of, here, I'll extend, I think I sent this to you, there's a hard copy. I think about half of them in the green area has been done, they're marked green.
Mrs. Flaherty, do you have questions?
Well, yeah, I do have one. Okay. The curbing, do you know if it's true that it was just put with concrete and nothing underneath?
I wasn't there when they were doing it. Mr. Schofield called me when they were doing it, and he told me that's what it was, so.
I sent pictures. And I have pictures for you if you like them.
So the one was a sidewalk panel that didn't get removed. It was just ground flush. So that one, there wouldn't be an issue with the base. The other one was a piece of curbing that was removed and replaced. So if they didn't prep the surface properly, there could be issues with it. I would say that as part of the conveyance process, the developer is required to give Gateway a 1-year warranty on all those items that are conveyed. So if there's an issue, I would recommend that you go out and take a look before that year warranty is up, and if there are, make them fix it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a 1-year warranty,
Yes, sir.
not a 3-year warranty.
Um,
I thought it was a 3-year.
is it 3 years? I thought it was.
Yeah, I think
No, I
it's-
think you're correct. Actually, I'm sorry. I think I
it's
misspoke. It's 3. You're right. Sorry.
Are you prepared to say this afternoon then that the punch list, which would have been moved forward from the previous punch list that should have set a line, the new punch list has been done and this is ready for acceptance?
In regards to Tractel, all of the punch list items that we have provided have been corrected.
This is kind of unusual, but this deal's unusual. At the last meeting, I indicated that I'd talked to the bonding company on this. I think somehow, some way, I have no problem to go ahead and make the motion later on pending, getting it from the attorney, subject to legal. Making the motion to go on ahead and accept, but on this deal here, I'm of the opinion that somehow, some way, I don't know if it's Chris and/or the developer, and if it's the developer, copy us, but I would like to see that bonding company notified that this thing was accepted day and date, so there is no doubt that we set the line of which and when warranty starts, so that when we come a year from now and it doesn't get done, we're going to be knocking on their door to get these things fixed. But I have no problem, again, pending legal, of making the motion on the basis that the engineering has been satisfied.
Just the comment, I guess, to follow up from Mr. Schofield. So, I don't know what permit the city thinks is required. I don't know, but that probably should be looked into further. Right, and the SIT permit was closed several years ago. So this would be something in addition to that.
In my life, I have never seen a permit on punch list item repair.
I haven't either, but I don't know.
Now, I don't want to dispute, I don't know Mr. Porter from Adam, but certainly would be worth a phone call to make sure that he's sticking to that, because if he's doing that with every developer, all I can say is, God, there's one hell of a lot of applications going in down there.
I don't know the specifics. I didn't talk to Mr. Porter, but, I mean, if that is gonna be an issue, I mean, I would just say.
Have you ever heard of it before?
With Mr. Porter? Mr.
No,
Porter
no,
and I
no.
have
You ever
had-
heard of having to have an application for a construction of a punch list item?
No.
I've never heard of
It's not
such a
something
thing.
that's normal. I'm just saying, if it's gonna be a problem,
Check.
make it someone else's problem.
Do you have anything else to say at this time?
No.
Mr. Caldwell, do you or any of your associates have anything to say at this time? Ms. Mizzi, do you have anything further to say at this time?
Bond's work group is okay with the bonds.
Say again?
The bonds work group is okay with the bonds in track L.
Mr. Tinkle, will you make your motion, please? Excuse
I
me?
think,
Mr. Chair, if I may, at the risk of being glared at or stared at, right now we're on 3AI, but I think it's a combination of 5B and 3AI, just for the record, if the board's wanting to take action on the conveyance of Tract L. Just a refresher, back in January board meeting, I think, I received a package of materials from Charles Mann in the submittal of November 27th, 2017. And an excerpt from that transmittal letter was, please note that these turnover materials do not include the landscape maintenance easements and related documents needed from the Pelican Reserve Community Association, Inc., and the Avila at Sun City Center Fort Myers Condominium Association, Inc. WCI Communities LLC is still working on obtaining these items, and they will be submitted under separate cover for the district's review and acceptance once obtained. And that's referencing, again, a letter from Mr. Mann of November 27th, 2017. If you recall, the board discussion was not doing incremental piecemeal, but let's have everything at one time. On January 23rd, I received an email that I've not yet revised, that's just 8 days ago, from Mr. Mann.
This is 2018, you said?
Yes, January, last Wednesday, Tuesday, excuse me. An email from Mr. Mann with a materials, 24 pages of materials, a submittal package for Tract L. And he references that although he responded to the district regarding this matter by Mr. Mann's letter of September 9th, 2016, and then again on November 27th, 2017, let's recall that's the date that I just read the excerpt from, that Lennar WCI acknowledged they did not have all the necessary documents. Sounds like we lost a turn. In this letter,
Get Diane to get the phone, please.
it talks about that the turnover, this is January 23rd again, it says, and it's not in your packet. Finally, please note that these turnover materials do not include the landscape maintenance easement and related documents from the Villa at Sun City Center, Fort Myers Condominium Association, Inc., which were planned to be submitted at the same time. And they go on through this whole discussion with regards to this. I would suggest that this item isn't ready for consideration today. I've not reviewed these, and the board hasn't seen these.
add something that I was of the understanding, maybe I would have thought you would have known it. I was of the understanding that the Avila group, and Rhonda, correct me if I'm wrong, that Avila is not going to consent to this, and they're dropping out of the picture. So our acceptance will be everything except what they had originally put in there.
Correct.
So if that's the case, then we don't need anything from them. They want it, let them have it.
But I think what we need to do is make sure we have, I haven't had, again, a chance to review these documents with regard, and that's what that letter says, they either have to amend their documents or do something else in order to engage in it. I haven't had a chance to review the sketch and legal to see if it backs off their property and what that, and again, this just came in January 23rd.
Charles, can you help us on this? What, before you get up there, one other question, this is for either one of you attorneys or both. But I've come to find out that 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, an easement was granted by this entity, turned into this entity. What keeps us from going down to the courthouse and recording it? Is there a statute of limitations on how long the ink has to dry? I have a memo from back then, Ed, that I think addresses it, but I'm not sure if I can retrieve it, because.
Well,
that
no,
was
mine,
an
mine's
issue-
just a straight
Oh, no.
question of if I've got a document from somebody and I fail to record it, can I record it at a later date?
Yes,
Which would
although
solve
this
the
is-
problem
but-
with
This is
this.
really a question for Mr. Pierce, but I
Yes, but
think.
whether it's effective or not, depending upon whether it's valid or not.
Well, I think it was offered for acceptance, hasn't been acceptance, and as we've just heard, I think Avila is objecting, so I would be, if I were sitting in Mr. Pierce's seat, I'd be concerned that that was a revocation, so I would submit that you're probably not in a position to simply go record this, and I would expect that Mr. Pierce would agree with that.
Okay,
I
if we,
wasn't ready back then.
if we would go that route, which would then imply that Avila is out. Are
Oh,
the,
sorry
are,
about that. I think I accidentally disconnected it.
are the
Okay.
documents that we have, or this is better yet for you, Tony, are the documents that we have with the knowledge that Avila is not included, are there any reasons we can't accept it?
Again, that's a package I just got 9 days ago, January 23rd, where it said we're backing off of Villa. I've not had a chance to review those yet. And it's not in your agenda packet. And so I can't say yes or no.
But my understanding, the question of whether Avila would be left out was addressed 2 meetings ago, and I was not here, but I believe we represented, hey, we'd approach him again, give it a shot. They've said no, essentially, and so I'm not sure what new needs to be reviewed that wouldn't have been reviewed then on
Need to
this
make sure the
issue.
legal descriptions are correct as to what you're backing off. Again, I've not had a chance to review. If the board wants to take action, and that's the board's decision, but I can't tell you whether what they provided in their January 23rd submittal satisfies my prior concerns.
But, go ahead. It's-
So, my question is, our attorney has not looked at these papers to say whether they should be, whether we could make a motion to approve. Is this what I'm understanding?
That's correct.
Thank you.
And we would submit, everything was submitted sufficient to do that.
Well, again, I think it's just disingenuous. This board
This is
requires that
February.
materials be provided to it, and as reviewed, I'm sure, the Tuesday before the board meeting, and to then send it to one of the parties to review it Tuesday before the board meeting, anticipate that it's going to be reviewed with sight unseen by the board.
Well, in November, we submitted a complete package for Tractell absent Avila and the Small Pelican Preserve area. That was reviewed, commented on with respect to Avila. We cannot submit Avila, we won't be submitting anything, and about 10 days ago, we submitted the Pelican Preserve. So, which really are just a mirror for a small area of everything else, but this wasn't a new package or anything. This was just a supplement, following up on the conversation. I'll leave it 10 days if that's sufficient. I mean, in my mind, it is. It's something that was pretty minor as an addition to the original package, but
It's actually 9 days, Charles, and it came in the afternoon of the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. We don't need to hear any more about this. Mr. Perez, we've been going round and round on this Tractell now for many months,
Years, quite frankly.
many years. I stand corrected.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry, but it has been.
And if we're going to have it appear on our agenda, Mr. Manager and Mr. Attorney, then I expect that it's ready for the board's motion and approval. Coming in here, during the meeting, when everybody's sitting here, saying you're not ready to give us the green light on it, it is not an acceptable way to run a meeting, in my opinion.
I understand. And I did not know it was on the agenda until I received the meeting book on Friday.
You guys need to talk.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Flaherty has indicated she will not second a motion to accept this at this time. So I'm suggesting that this thing be pulled from the agenda until you're happy.
I would suggest that the board could put it on the February 15th agenda, and we'll make a recommendation once and for all that time.
You heard that?
Yes, sir. And I will provide my comments to Chris by no later than next Tuesday, or Monday.
Can you let it go at that, Rhonda?
So I know we've changed the order a bit, and so I would like the opportunity to speak if we're talking about Tractell now.
Yes, we are, but I was hoping that we were finished with it for the evening.
Well,
What's
so,
that?
okay. So was I. So I just want to say a couple of things. Okay, number one is, we had 11,000 linear feet of roadway, and residents of P-PAC said there were numerous issues. Okay, district engineer went back out there, there were two. There were two out of 11,000 feet. So we went out there and we completed the improvements, and the district engineer signed back off on that. And I have before and after pictures and the district sign off for you.
Thank you. Today, so.
This is what we did. That's what we did.
So-
These were all submitted to you folks.
Okay.
Thank you, Rhonda.
And then the second thing I want to say is, even if we delay this once again to the 15th, there is no doubt in my mind that district council will not give us a recommendation. And the reason I say that is because for the last 14 submittals, which he has taken on average of 75 days to respond to our first submittal, we have never gotten an acceptance. So I don't think we're going to get one. And I don't think waiting another 2 weeks is going to get us one. So we've submitted everything, and I agree with you 100%. When it's on the agenda, people need to be ready to speak and give an opinion.
Thank you, and I think Mr. Pierce has heard me that we want, if we want this on the agenda on the 15th.
Yes, sir.
If at all humanly possible, and if you're not happy, you talk to the Lennar folks
Oh,
here.
well, and again, I always, just if I may, just take a little bit of liberty with the outrageous, or the indication of indignation by Ms. Brewer when this whole Cypress Grove transaction began in 2012. And the deficiencies at that time were brought to their attention. They've not even begun to be addressed until 2015. And I've reviewed these documents, and I'll provide my opinion, my recommendation to the board. They will be on the agenda for the 15th, and the board can take its action.
Yeah,
Bill, one question for Tony. Is the removal of this one tract the sole issue?
I have to go back and look at all my memos, Ed, because there are a number of memos, because it was done piecemeal.
But that is basically what you're saying?
That's what they're asserting. That's what they are asserting.
Okay.
And again,
I'm-
that's what WCI is asserting.
I'll wave the flag and see what happens, but I'm going to make the motion that we accept Tract L.
is there a second? Hearing none, motion does not carry. And the item will be on the 15th agenda, February 15th agenda.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Engineer, are you ready to give us any more good news?
No, sir, sorry, that's all I have for you today. If you got any other questions, be happy to
Mrs.
answer.
Flaherty, do you have questions for the engineer? Mr. Finkel, do you have questions for the engineer?
I've got quite a few.
You do?
Are we now in a position that we're proceeding with the work on facility plan and the Gateway Greens storm sewer cleaning?
Facility plan is on the public hearing for the DEP loan.
No, I mean facility plan 2, starting the
Yep.
preparation of the work.
I'm
We're
with you.
we're a
But
go
we gotta
on
wait
that.
till we gotta wait till the public hearing for the DEP. That's on the 15th of this month, I believe.
Okay, and the plans and specifications for the Gateway Greens restoration.
So I got that task authorization handed to me a moment ago when I was standing up here. So now, yes, now we are, as of right now.
Okay.
Hold on. I want to make sure I understand that. Would you say that again in layman's terms so I can understand what you got right now and we're ready to go? Would you say that again,
The
please?
Gateway Greens storm pipe cleaning, it's a task authorization that we presented to put together a bid package to clean pipes and catch basins in the Gateway Greens area. This is basically the same thing we did last year and the year before for Silver Lakes and Stony Brook. It's another task authorization to perform work.
It's just, how much is it
It's
gonna?
one we approved, Bill, about a month and a half ago. I just wanted to make sure we have the go-ahead so that we're working on it.
I want to know how much it's going to be if you got an estimate.
I do. I got the thing right here. It is time and materials not to exceed $9,800.
Mr. Manager, are you okay with that?
Yes, sir. Approved by the board December.
We have I've identified now, brought with me two great big three-ring notebooks of all of Gateway Green's videos from the Morris Riley report, and have all of Gateway identified except Stony Brook, which has been done, Silver Lakes, which has been done, and Daniels Preserve, which we never did the videoing because we ran out of money 4 years ago. But I've got everything else done. And we're looking at in excess of $1.5 million worth of work. 1.5 million. Gateway Greens alone is in excess of $550,000. We had budgeted last year $165,000. And it's my understanding a portion of that has been spent. We'll talk about that later as to where it went. But I want to find out how we take and move or transfer the funds that are in the budget to do all of Gateway Greens at one time with one contract, which means we need about another $400,000. And my proposal is to take that out of the building fund, transfer it over to storm sewer fund so that we can immediately do that work and proceed with it. And then have a plan to be discussed of how we're going to fund the other $1 million of all the other communities in Gateway. I was shocked when I started looking at the videos in detail again after 4 years of Timber Ridge. Better than 70% of their sewers are blocked greater than 20%. They're not going to be happy if they aren't on some schedule. Pinecrest has hit me. I've got phone calls from other communities asking, when are we going to get ours done? And I think it's time that we've kicked this can down the road long enough. It needs to be addressed. But the big thing is right now, I don't want to start and go out and do Gateway Greens on a half-assed way of doing it for $165,000 when it's $550,000 and we know what it is. I'd like to do it all at one time, so
That's some
I can get with, I can
serious
get
money,
with,
Ed.
that's some serious money, but it's one heck of a lot more important than what some of the other things we're going to talk about today.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Yes, Chairman.
Is it on this subject?
Yeah.
Come to the microphone and identify yourself.
Oh, I just wanted to ask one question, that's all. You say you looked at the tapes on the
Video.
storm drain? Yeah, video.
Yes.
What does it show that's in there?
A lot of it's debris, construction debris, sand, grit, Coke bottles, tree limbs, branches, you name it. It's accumulation of 25 years of doing nothing.
So
Nothing.
it's got everything in it.
It's got everything in it. Half of those manhole covers have never, ever been opened. Never been opened. So it is a lot of money, Bill. It's $1 million, $1.5 million bucks. But if you take it over a period of 20 years, it's nothing.
Yeah, but
It's
you want to
normal.
do it all in 1 year.
Well, that's not the residents' fault. That's this board's fault. And it's the prior chairman's fault, is whose fault it was, because he sat on his you-know-what and did nothing in the way of maintaining this place. I'm not doing that anymore. These people deserve to be taken care of and have a system that's properly operated and maintained.
Okay,
And
okay.
we need to fix it.
You have other items for the engineer?
Hold on. Yes, South Florida Water Management District has sent us another letter. I guess the question is, where are we at on, I know that you're working with Chris and Elle and Mike on these transfers. That second letter, I think it was it in the board book? I think it was. It wasn't very nice. It was kind of a warning, like, we told you in December, and you didn't do anything, and here we are in January, and we're asking you and giving you 30 more days. I understand we have some issues, but somehow, some way, we have got to get a letter. We're going to be going to South Florida Water Management District here in the next, hopefully, 30 to 45 days, and going to be asking them for one heck of a lot of favors. They have told us they want this in exchange.
Well, you're talking
And-
about things that I don't know anything about.
Yeah, you do, Bill. We talked about it.
Well,
These
I
are
don't
those,
recall
these are
you
those
talking about.
45 permits, plus or minus, that they have asked us to take over.
Oh, that.
That. There are some of those that what I'm trying to get is to meet them halfway. The ones that are no-brainers, as quick as we can, give them a transmittal letter and send those things and get them out of here. The ones that are remaining, where we have dead engineers, dead developers, or whatever, that we can't get the documentation necessary to sign them, include in that letter that, you know what, will freeze before we accept those. We can't go out and accept stuff that we can't certify. I mean, that's a gun to our head. But to do nothing, to me, is the worst crime of all. They're sitting down there like, do you people hear us? We
So-
haven't responded to them.
So what Mr. Tinkle's talking about is, at the last board meeting when I was up here, we had discussion on this letter that South Florida had written Gateway. I think it was originally in October, I thought. Maybe it was November, I can't recall the exact date. But it was a letter regarding the conversion to the operation phase for all of the permits, the South Florida Water Management District permits. So this was the last 20-plus years of permits that have accumulated that have never been closed out. So we've been working for a while now to wrap up these permits. Now, like Mr. Tinkle said, there's various issues with a lot of them. Some of them are good to go, and we've identified a chunk of those that are good to go and can be transferred to the operation phase, which effectively closes that permit. So at the last board meeting, we were directed to go and start working on those and put together a list. So at the next board meeting, I know there's at least 6 that we've gone through already that we think are done, we think are good to go. There's a total of, I think it's 70?
Probably close.
It's a lot of permits. It's a significant chunk. So it's not something that's going to be addressed all at one time. It's certainly going to be a lengthy process. It took 30 years to accumulate. It's not going to be knocked out in 6 months.
Okay, you feel you have your marching orders on that item?
Yes, sir.
Can we take and agree that by our February 15th meeting, which still buys us 10 days, they give us 30 days, from January 25th to February 25th, can we have a transmittal letter to South Florida Water Management District and attaching to it all the permits that are the no-brainers that we can accept, and the basis of non-acceptance of the remainder? Just saying why we aren't accepting them at this point in time. We know what most of them are. There's simple things that we don't have. We don't have as-bills. We don't have the easements to get on the property. So we could list those. In other words, give them something to chew on and buy some time.
Sure. So my plan was, and let me know if you like this or if you don't, my plan was the next board meeting, we were going to come to you with the documents on all the ones that we think are good to go, or ones that we have found we're good on, and recommend that you sign the forms to transfer those to the operation phase. Someone from the district does have to sign it. In the past, the chairman's been the person that has signed those, so if you'd like to continue that, I guess that's what we'll do. And then for the rest of them, we can go through the entire list and identify either we haven't finished looking at this one, or we looked at this one and we know you shouldn't take it, and here's why.
Okay, he's got his marching orders on that
Okay,
item. What else?
two other items. One, you might not be able to handle this one. Pond 106, residents at Gateway are hitting me. Where are we at on the repair of that pond?
So
Are you involved on that?
No, so the contractor gave a quote like a year and a half ago, and I'm going to have to.
Okay, I'll talk to staff on that one after a bit. The last one is, the high school just approved, or the school board just approved buku cash. I'm assuming that's soft cost for engineers, architects, and all that stuff. Have we been given any indication, or has anybody contacted us about who the engineer is going to be to start working on this drainage?
I mean, I can tell you just because I know the person who's doing it. It's Johnson Engineering is their site development engineer.
Do we know that they've been officially notified with a notice to proceed?
I don't know if they've gotten one. The board just voted on it a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah, it's just.
I
a couple
don't
days.
know if they've gotten it
Can
yet.
we do this, that, I don't want this thing to get 30 days down the road, and then, well, if we would have known that, we could have worked with you. Can we get a hold of Johnson, who you know over there, and suggest that we meet with them and are top of their list on the discussion of the drainage issue?
Sure, and we've had conversations with them. They know what we're looking for. We've already given them a heads up, so they know about it. But we can have some more formal conversations, and we can schedule that if
Because
you'd like.
the reason I'm bringing it up is because when we go to South Florida to start trying to make some changes on Hampton Park, for example, I want to be able to tell them that 4 CFS is not going to be coming this way, so we don't need to worry about that, or 4 CFS is coming this way, the runoff from that property. I just don't want this stuff to drop like it seems to happen a lot around here.
Yeah, I will reach out to their engineer and see where he's at contract and TP wise, and see if he's in a position to meet.
You know what 4 CFS is, right?
4 cubic feet per second. It's a whole lot of water.
It's a lot of water.
You finished?
I am finished. Thank you.
Mrs. Flaherty, do you have anything?
I don't have anything.
Margaret, do you have anything?
I don't have anything for the engineer, and I'm going to sign off. And leave the meeting to the 10 people.
Sayonara.
Bye.
All righty, thank you very much. But that being said, I don't know if we have anything else for me tonight. That's probably it, unless you had any other questions.
Jim had something.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Oh, all right.
So you mentioned 4 CFS. Is that from the current estimate of how much water, or is that after it's all concrete?
37 CFS per square mile is the maximum runoff from an area, so I'm assuming that when they converted that 55 acres, which is the percentage of a square mile, which is 640, that's where 4 CFS came from. Right now, the plan is all 4 CFS, plus or minus, is going through Hampton Park. I want to be able to tell them when we go in to ask for approval of changing anything or modifying anything in Hampton Park, that we're dealing with correct numbers.
So to answer Mr. Brand's question, the way they do those permits is you basically get to discharge as much water as you do now. If you go and make improvements and add parking lots and things like that, you have to attenuate that flow. That's why they put ponds, things like that. So, no, won't get any worse.
You're excused. You're excused.
Thank you, sir. Have a
No,
nice night.
Mr. Attorney?
Oh, yes, the item 3B, little I. And again, well, I'm not sure, should we have Danny for that? I mean, or Tyler for FPL? Any engineering issues?
I don't have any engineering issues.
And again, this is my memorandum with regards to, from a legal perspective, some of the considerations regarding whether or not the district wants to acquire the fee simple title to the land commonly known as the FPL easement lands. And in the preamble, you notice, and in some of my footnotes, once we pin down the exact area by sketch and legal, then we have a better idea. But there's a range of acreage that's kind of confusing as to what exactly is proposed to be conveyed. And if the district does take title to it, it will take title subject to the existing FPL easements, which I know they're not exciting reading, but I thought for the public and the board, if they wanted to, they could see those, and I summarized what the restrictions and limitations are and what the liabilities are with regards to the district owning a piece of property that has this high voltage transmission line going through it, what the limitations are as far as utilization. There's pluses and minuses with owning land. The district does have liability for the operation of its water management features there now, from the standpoint of having to maintain them in good, safe condition, compliant with all permits and development orders. The district would not get any increased liability for the operation of the ponds, water management areas, by virtue of having fee simple ownership. The plus is the district would get additional opportunities to enforce laws against trespassing if the district owns a fee simple title, which does not now exist with regards to merely being a grantee under some easements. The district then, though again, we have greater liability for all of the land, not just the area where it has its lakes and ponds. So those are the pluses and minuses with regards to owning it. You have better control if you're the fee simple owner. You may have additional liability here because of lands not part of the water management system would be owned or maintained or operated or controlled by the district. And again, I went through, starting at page 4, the limitations by virtue of the FPL rights-of-way and easements, and there are some covenants for easement use, which by looking at the documents and going through the minutes of past board meetings, these were negotiated between WCI and FPL in 1993 and in 2003. So again, I think the board needs to, and from an engineering and or management and operational perspective, needs to understand from management and the operational folks whether or not they are comfortable with operating, maintaining, and what conversation, I don't know what conversations Chris has had with FPL, how amenable they are. FPL is usually pretty tough to work with. They're very protective from a liability perspective of the rights that they have. And again, you're seeing there some of one of the other downsides is, and that exists now, whether we own it, we the district own it, fee simple or not, is if FPL wants to relocate its transmission lines and towers, they're going to try to do it without making the district reconfigure its water management. But if they can't, or if FPL has to reconfigure its transmission system based upon our existing water management facilities, we, the district, would end up having the tab for it. I mean, that's there one way or another. Well, it says owner, but it's our ponds or lakes. So, and again, so my ultimate opinion is that, subject to easements, covenants, and restrictions and governmental regulations, at the time the district accepts fee simple ownership, the district as fee simple owner has a greater ability to control the use of and entry upon the land. And there are significant restrictions and limitations that exist by way of the FPL easement documents and the rights of FPL. Number two, the district has premises liability exposure as to its current facilities in an area for which it has been granted easements, whether it holds an easement or possesses fee simple title. And then it talks about the ability to enforce activities on the property that would violate various permits. In other words, if we have a permit with Lee County or permit with South Florida, it's more difficult to enforce.
Mr. Attorney, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a simple issue, and I hesitate to go forward with this issue absent two of our supervisors. So I'm suggesting that we put this also on the agenda, a future agenda, when you have got your acreage straightened out. Well, no, let me rephrase that. We put this on a future agenda when we are sure that at least a majority of the board wants to proceed with this item. You have indigestion, Mr. Tingle?
I have a lot of indigestion. I've read all 35, 40 pages of this, every single word. I think what Tony is saying, and I'll pull it out and say it for him, is that
And I'll confirm or deny.
And he is saying is that, yeah, go ahead with this. There is nothing wrong with it, subject to, and I think he lists very well in item 4. So I'm ready to make the motion to proceed with what legal work needs to be done, what surveying work needs to be done, because I went and did my own calculations, and I came up plus or minus 135 acres plus or minus probably a half an acre. David, and it's in the stuff, I'd sent an email to David several months ago, and he answered it, and this has just been a mess with the changes and amendments and all that, but I'm going to guess that when we had the survey done, it's going to be around 135, 136 acres, notwithstanding some, what'd you call it, exception that was noted in there. But if you find that exception, you found the needle in a haystack. But I see absolutely no advantage to us in not taking this. It's more advantageous to us to own that. We have assets on it. We have a lot of things coming up that we could use it for. It's identified in the DRI as a part of our park system. I guess I just don't see anything that would, any reason why we wouldn't do it.
Do you have anything?
No.
If you insist on making a motion, I can't stop you, so go ahead and make your motion.
I would make the motion that we proceed and authorize the attorney to proceed with the legal work necessary to start the process of accepting this.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, for clarification, and maybe for Mr. Tinkle as the individual who made the motion, would this also entail, if you recall, the first attachment to my memorandum was my memo to my file after the board meeting of January 4th, where we outlined, and WCI was gracious enough, David was, and Rhonda, with regards to certain activities that would be undertaken by WCI, with regards to confirming development orders or taking a whack at it or stab at it.
I will leave those up to you to work with them to get those,
Okay.
but as I recall, the sticking point at that meeting was the surveying expense, and I believe that would be an expense that we would incur.
Okay.
And so,
And part of that would be able to work with Chris, to work with Johnson Engineering.
Yeah.
They seem to have the best handle on the surveying of that area, if that's how the board wishes.
that's fine. I would amend the motion to reflect that.
Will the seconder
I accept that.
agree? Anything further? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries 2-1.
And what I'll do, Mr. Chairman, if I may, to be bold, put an item on the agenda for the 15th just as a status. I think it'd be helpful to have this as a continuing action item until it's finalized,
You don't have to put all of that detail.
No, sir, I'll reference this prior board packet, how's that?
That's good. All right. Mr. Attorney, do you have another item for us?
Yes, this will be a walking item, and I apologize, it's something that has sort of come to a head this week. I don't know if the board wants to take a brief recess to read a memo that I have on it.
Sounds like an idea. We'll stand in recess for 10 minutes.
And I'll pass out a memo on this item. No, I understand.
All the stuff you have is, I have no problem.
I understand, it's just pros and cons, that's all. You may need to do a phase one too. I would recommend that, Ed, you know that?
Yeah.
God knows they have those transformers.